Hi, mystery writers. Hold on, I've got some technical something is happening. Okay, sorry. Um, Welcome to Mystery Writer Studio. I'm Zara Altair, and today I wanted to talk about wrestling your manuscript after you finish the first draft because it's switching hats. It's going from creativity and mind expanding and brainstorming and creating those characters and carrying out the plot to smoothing out all the bumps that are there. And trust me, everybody has bumps, even writers who've been doing it for very successful writers who've been doing it for years. Editing is a very important part of making your manuscript presentable for readers. And the second draft examines your writing and fills in any missing elements that you may have skipped and strives to improve your story and your writing craft both at the same time. You're switching from to your editor mode, and it's very different. And you're examining your story bit by bit for any bumps, and those are essentially anything that brings your reader out of the story. And you want your plot to make sense, your syntax to flow, and your character roles to fit the story. So there's a lot to examine and think about when you're looking at your draft, um, your first draft. Um, so many writers, and I do this myself, once that first draft is finished, put the manuscript away. Don't look at it for a couple of weeks, because what you're going to do in your editing mode is look at it and with fresh eyes, and look at it with fresh eyes as a reader. What is it that trips you up while you're reading your manuscript? And also, I suggest, if you've been writing on the computer, which most people do these days, that you print out a hard copy, because just reading it in a different format helps you catch things. Just like when you're holding a book and you see a typo, you want to see your typos right now, right? Um, and also, it makes it easy to mark, so you can go back and make some editorial changes to your manuscript. Um, I actually go a step further. I put the manuscript in spiral binding, so the pages don't get out of order. The manuscript gets dropped, or the kitty slides over it, or whatever can happen to loose pages. I like to have them all in order. Um, Essentially, what you want to do is bring fresh eyes to what you've written. So, what do you look for? There's just so many things to look for when you're going through to create your second draft. Um, First of all, if you went through and you were writing and you knew a word was just a placeholder, or you even just put, mine is three X's in a row, or whatever your marker is for those places where you know you need to put something, you can go through and search all of those and start looking for the exact right word, the stronger verb, whatever it is that you need for that part. And then also, you may want to fill in any details from missing research. So that's another thing I mark as I'm writing my first draft. I need to know more about this. And I also um, mark that in the manuscript so I can just search it and find it and look for how to do that. You can also look for plot holes, where the story jumps without the reader knowing why it jumped. This can happen, especially if you are starting and stopping. Like if you've been working on your manuscript and then you stop, and you start several days later. It can feel jumpy, so you want to smooth that out as well. Um, you may discover as you're reading that you want to reorder some scenes, and this scene really needs to go a couple of scenes earlier or a couple of scenes later. It doesn't matter. You want to look for that to make the transition for your reader as smooth as possible and help them understand why your characters are doing what they're doing and in what order. All right. Um, if your character count is high, you may want to trim that character count by, say, combining two characters that pretty much serve the same story role and put them into one character, or even completely eliminating certain characters. All right. Um, and then, of course, there's the editing part, like rewriting clunky sentences, rearranging paragraphs. Um, and also, you may even want to reorder chapters as you think about what's going on. Some of these things are going to be helped if you've done a lot of planning at the beginning and you have an order for your story. So, especially for discovery writers, you may find that you need to reorder chapters or reorder scenes. All right. And another thing you want to do is close the loop of any subplots. Don't let readers get the great mystery solved, but wonder what happened to Harry and Martha. I thought they were going to go, challenge the protagonist, and it's floating out there in air. And even though the great big mystery is solved, there's still going to be that nagging question in your reader's mind. So you want to get rid of all those things, so the reader isn't left wondering. Because remember, at the end, you want your reader to feel, oh my gosh, we solved the mystery. They're so happy, and because mystery readers love that puzzle and they love the final explanation and exposition. So, you want to make sure that your subplots, I've talked about this separately, subplots are closed before you get to the end of your story, but you do need to close them. So don't leave them just hanging out in the air, whatever happened to X, because your reader's going to wonder. And it's going to dilute the feeling they have of fulfillment when you get to that final climax and exposition and the revelation of the truth. All right. See, what else did I want to talk about? Oh, then there is your mindset about editing, and that is really, you want to suspend your judgment about your writing self. All right. So, editing is a really huge job. And as you read your first draft, your mindset is critical to make those second draft edits work. As you read your story and find weak points, you know, you don't need to judge yourself as a writer. You just know that this is a weak point. I'm going to fix it, because all writers have these editing challenges when they finish their first draft. This doesn't mean you're a bad writer, all right? It just means there's more work to do. So the reason you're going through your manuscript is to improve your story. And if a sentence feels weak or a character takes up too much of your story, you use that critical reader, right? That critical reader mind to note where you need improvement. No writer creates the perfect first draft. Just, it doesn't happen. So you are improving the big picture. That's what the whole challenge of editing that first draft is improving the big picture of your story and um, smoothing things out. And you really want to start with the story first, because if you're moving things around, taking characters out, taking scenes out, you don't want to do all that fine tuning grammar and spelling stuff on things that are going to just not even be there. So just hold your horses on those things unless you see them and just do a little tiny fix. But that's not your goal right now. Your goal right now is to smooth out the story. You want to find those story flaws and the character roles, and you want to make sure you're raising the stakes and heightening the story tension, and make sure each scene not only makes sense, but that it moves the story forward, and the subplots support the main story as much as possible. Um, what you're doing is you're looking at your story and the way that a reader responds to your story. You'll add to the story, including more details. You're going to fix problems. So once again, just avoid concentrating on grammar and punctuation until you finish that second draft. There's no point in fixing the fine details that you may eliminate, all right? Then I also wanted to just emphasize that there are two phases to the second draft. You're going to find the weak points in your story. That's the first phase of the second step. I can't talk. The first phase of the second draft. And once you've identified those weak spots, you're going to start making changes. And the second phase of that second draft is the actual rewriting of the sections you found needed help, moving the scenes around, moving the chapters around. If you're going to do that, you need to make sure that the transitions make sense as you move things around. You could be shortening descriptive passages or combining minor characters into one and making sure that all flows, or adding story events to eliminate plot holes, emphasizing the main character's personality traits, or developing their inner conflict to make them more engaging for your readers. There's all the things that happen as you're working on your second draft. Think of the second draft as the learning phase to improve your story. So I hope that helps. It is a big wrestling job. We got this 300-page plus or minus manuscript that you're checking for so many things as you're editing the first draft, and just do it slowly. I think I've mentioned my author friend. We meet once a week to share our author journey, and she just finished editing her first draft, and I think it took almost 6 weeks. So it's a big job, and the more you focus on it, the better your story's going to be. And as you do that, it's going to be ready to send off to your editor. Yes, this is all the stuff you do before it ever goes to an editor. All right, thank you so much for being here, and I hope this helps you. And I will see you again next week in the Mystery Writers Studio.